Hi everyone, I hope you had a great Labor Day weekend. I wanted to introduce our group. We are going to be covering Chapter 3 in the Deviant Behavior textbook. Our members are Ricardo Bello, Jennifer Benitez, Gabrielle Vertigo, Shanique Biglow, Christopher Bolanos, Camille Brown, Nicole Buchanan, Jose Cabada, Danielle Cabrera, and myself, Marie Borbis, although I go by Mimi. This chapter is conveniently divided into constructionist sociological theories, each of which provide a lens through which to view deviant behavior. Each of us will be summarizing a particular theory and providing a concise explanation of its application in real-life situations. Thank you for watching. I hope this helps you all. Happy studying.
Hey everyone, my name is Nicole and I'll be introducing labeling theory to you all. Labeling theory is a version of symbolic interactionism and was developed in the early 1960s. According to labeling theory, we should not only focus on the deviant person alone, but also on the interaction between deviant and other conventional people. The meaning of a person's act is what labeling theorists focus most of their research on. When people have a negative response to an act, it is identified as being deviant, whereas a positive reaction is associated with non-deviance. Once it is determined which acts are considered deviant, labeling theorists begin to study who applies the label of being deviant and which individuals are usually labeled as the deviants. When thinking about who labels whom, labeling theory suggests that the people in power or that have a higher authority and status in society are usually the ones to place labels on those who've committed a deviant act. Generally, the rich, white, or powerful and their representatives are more likely to label others as deviant. So these types of people include police, judges, prison guards, and other social control agents. On the other hand, the poor, black, or powerless are more likely to be labeled as deviant. Examples like criminals, juvenile delinquents, drug addicts, and mental patients are those who are classified as deviants. So now that we have established who are the labelers and the labeled people in society, we can discuss the consequences for each group. Those who label others as deviants only experience positive consequences as a result of their labeling. Labeling enhances social cohesion and social order. Labeling theory suggests that if individuals are singled out to be convicted and punished as criminals, the whole community will have a better understanding of good and evil, thus promoting non-deviance. Now, on the other hand, those who are labeled as deviant face much harder consequences. These individuals often never experience anything positive, only negative experiences. Labeling theory suggests that once people are labeled deviant, they are more likely to see themselves as deviant, which then leads them to continue acts of deviant behavior. Labeling theorists are interested in analyzing the process of becoming a secondary deviant. According to Edwin Lamert, secondary deviance is when the person comes to agree with the society's definition of the behavior as deviant, seeing him or herself as a deviant. So people who are labeled as deviant oftentimes are treated badly. They're looked at as objects, animals, or non-persons. This makes life more challenging and as a result prevents them from ever returning back to the conventional means of life. So now that we know the fundamentals of labeling theory, we can discuss how it's been evaluated over time. Many sociologists have criticized labeling theory for not being able to answer the question of what causes deviance in the first place. Research fails to produce consistent support to labeling theorists' assumptions that the deviant label leads the individual into further deviant involvement. Also, by insisting that no behavior can be deviant unless labeled as such, labeling theory inevitably implies that hidden deviance, particularly the kind committed often in secrecy by powerful people, cannot be labeled as deviant. Basically, that means that the powerful people in America are doing whatever they want without being labeled as deviants because they're stereotypically not classified as being deviant, which is not the case most of the time. So basically that just sums up what labeling theory is, and I hope you guys all learned a bit from this presentation.
Hi, my name is Daniela, and I'll be covering part 1 of the phenomenological theory. Towards the end of the 1960s, some sociologists took a step beyond the labeling theory and developed a new version of symbolic interactionalism called the phenomenological theory. Phenomenological theory is also referred to as ethnomethodology, existential sociology, creative sociology, or sociology of everyday life. As opposed to labeling theory that deals with societal reaction to deviance and the consequence for the deviants and their laborers, it does not get into the minds of these people. Phenomenological theory delves into people's subjectivity, called a phenomenon, including their consciousness, perceptions, attitudes, feelings, and opinions about deviance. It assumes that all people, whether deviants or their laborers, are highly subjective into constructing, defining, or interpreting deviance, although they may claim to be very objective. Looking into people's subjective interpretation of their own experience is key to understanding deviant behavior. Looking at critique of positivism, positivism takes an objective and deterministic approach to deviance. They view a deviant person as an object whose behavior is determined or caused by various forces in the environments. However, phenomenologists consider the deviant subjective experience the heart of a deviant reality. Positivists do not study a phenomenon as it really is, but rather study their own conceptions of the phenomenon. The real phenomenon in phenomenologists' view is immediate experience and consciousness of the person under study. Looking at subjectivism as the key to deviant reality, to phenomenologists, what deviance means is fundamentally problematic, as people disagree over the meaning of deviance. The meanings that positivists ascribe to deviance are abstract in nature, that is independent of concrete situations in which the deviant person is involved. By contrast, the meaning that the deviant person inputs to his or her own behavior are situated in something that is tied to the concrete situation in which the subject is involved. Abstract meanings are the positivist so-called objective, scientific interpretation of the deviant's subject behavior, while situated meanings are the subject's subjective interpretation of the subject's own behavior. Alfred Schultz, 1962, a founder of phenomenology, refers to the abstract objective meaning as constructs of the second degree and the situated subjective meaning as constructs of the first degree. Thus, phenomenologists emphasize to understand deviance, we should rely heavily on people's subjective interpretations of their own deviant experiences.
So the chapter I'm going to briefly cover is chapter 3, and it's ethnography and application of phenomenology. And basically what it's doing is it's defining what the reality of deviance is. So the phenomenologists are basically analyzing how their subjects feel and think about their deviance. And one of the readings, it was saying that basically social phenomenologists talk about the social construction of reality. So they view social order as a creation of everyday interaction, often looking at like the conversations to find the methods that people use to maintain social relations. And the examples that were used that were really interesting in the book to kind of grasp what this theory is they used basically it's anything out of social norms. So this is can be crime, sex changes, which they use both. It's just the steps towards it. Pretty much phenomenologists are analyzing deviant behavior, and what everybody knows deviant behavior is any act that's done that's out of the social norms. And what social norms are is basically they're I want to say like invisible set of rules. It's basically they're not rules set, but it's basically people know because it's what normal people do. So anything outside of social norms. So you could think of how he has example like sex change. That's definitely out of social norm because you can see now. Let me be example of Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner, how he had the sex change. It was such a big deal and so exploited because first of all he was a famous runner, a famous man for running, and then all of a sudden he's a lady. So the society couldn't reacted a different way because it's not normal as for him because he's a celebrity. But little do you know that sex change has been going on for years. But because it's who he was, the icon he is, it's basically a big deal. So that's another thing. What these theorists are trying to break down. So going back to the Bruce Jenner, so what phenomenologists will do, they want to actually grasp the reality of deviance as to what they're thinking and feeling at the time of this behavior, this abnormal behavior, you can call it. So as for Bruce, they would one of the steps, like what was going through his mind, what parts of the body he wanted to keep as a woman or a man, like to get rid of the penis or, change to the female genital, all that. So that's what phenomenologists do. They kind of want to understand what's going on, as in for themselves, as for the deviant behavior, and as for others around that it affects. So it's not only just sex change. I was saying it's also crime. And in the book, they had like a good example. Let me go down real quick. Yeah, so for Bruce, he sees himself as a normal person, as Caitlyn. Like, that's him as a normal person. So, as for robbers, murderers, and all that, they also see what they're doing normal as well. Even though it's out of the social norm to rob and steal and to kill. But there's always something behind it. And this is what phenomenologists want to find out and discover, what they're thinking, why they're doing this action, and all the steps to get to where they are. I mentioned that the changes that are done, this deviant behavior, they see it as positive. They don't see nothing negative as the world would see. They don't see that this sex change is so negative, like you should be who you are, this is how God made you. Just like a robber, like stealing and robbing people is really wrong, but in their mind, it's just like, it's their fault. They are getting robbed because they're that stupid, or they're murdered because of this reason and that reason. So the example they have in here is about murder. I agree and disagree, but it is a good example. They're saying how the killers feel superior than their victim and that it happens for a reason because maybe the victim has taunted them, insulted them, but it just varies the cases because it's not always true. That's kind of about having a theory. There's not more than one way to think, but as this case, they do have an example of that. So they're saying that the reason why this deviant behavior is occurring, like why the person is robbing this person or why this person's killing that person, is because the victim has done something to them to deserve what they're doing. So they kind of flip it and make it positive. But as for society, this is wrong. There's consequences and all that. What's very interesting about this chapter was the ethnographic studies that they found. Stephen Taylor and Angus Vale, which was very interesting because Stephen Taylor mentioned a family who was considered mentally challenged or retarded, but they didn't see it because all of them were on the same mind level. They don't see the abnormal, that society sees. So that's another example too that a lot of people don't know this deviant behavior because it's normal to them. He mentioned that they carried on their everyday lives, normal. But outside of, that deviant behavior, it's considered abnormal. That there was something that was off, that wasn't in part of the social norms. That's what considered them. Angus Vale uses the example, I believe, of tattoos. Other people, society will look at him like, oh my God, look at all these tattoos. He's so tatted on his face here and there, but inside their, I want to say culture, but that's probably the wrong word, but inside their, I guess, society, or inside their lives, their tattoos seem normal. It's just like doing your hair or having a hat or having a car. Like, everybody had it, so it didn't really seem abnormal. But since society usually, most society doesn't have tattoos on their face, when they see it, they react. Well, evaluating the phenomenological theory, we see that phenomenologists analyze how their subjects feel and think about their deviants, themselves, and others. So it's not just their deviant behavior. They also think about who this may affect, other people, and about how they feel themselves before doing that deviant behavior. So that's just wrapping it up. I hope you guys enjoy the video. That was just a brief, overview of the chapter. I hope you guys learned a little bit something. The theory was, different, kind of hard to explain, but I hope I did a good job. And enjoy your day.
My name is Jose, and I will be talking about conflict theory. So conflict theory was first introduced by Karl Marx. Karl Marx was atheist later on in his life. Materialism was one of his biggest theories that he believed in. Fun fact about Karl Marx is that he was born in 1918 in Germany. He passed away in 1983 because of cancer. So him and his wife had 7 children, and this is really, really tragic, but Karl Marx had 4 children that passed away out of the 7. So the 3 that were left, 2 of them committed suicide, and 1 of them was left, and he actually lived a normal life and died of natural causes. A term used by socialists or sociologists is Marxism. History is all about rich versus the poor. So that's what Marxism is. Basically, that the society is ran by the rich, and the poor just follow along and try to fit in and try to gain wealth by working hard in this society. So what Marxism is that the rich exploit the poor, and one of his terms is the bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie are the rich plantation owners, or the guys who own the means of production. These guys actually exploit the proletariat, which are the working class. There's 4 main examples of that. Karl Marx divides his theory in. There is the primitive communism, there's the ancient society, feudal society, and capitalist society. So first off, the primitive society is there's no classes in society. So basically, there's no poor, no rich, there's no division of class. The second one is ancient society, and this was the division of this was either the masters and the slaves. For feudal society, it's believed that there were lords and there were serfs. And for the capitalist society, which is, I believe, is the most important one that we should take a look at, is the capitalists and the wage laborers. So what these people do is, what Karl Marx suggested is that eventually it was going to come a time and place that when the capitalists will be so separated from the wage laborers, so the rich will be super rich, the poor will be super poor, that the majority, would race against the capitalists or the plantation owners. Another way to look at it, it's all of this is by Marx, but Weber actually put a really good twist into conflict theory. So Weber explains conflict theory by economic terms. So economic gains and class equals material gains. So basically what we are looking at right now is that the United States it's literally a class divided society. We have the rich, which are the bourgeoisie or the plantation owners, or the 1%ers. Then we have the middle class, and we have a lower middle class. You have a poor and working class. So we have all these classes. They're separated by the money that they gain, the resources that they have to natural and material things. So all of this the Karl Marx talks about is basically that there will be a revolution against the one percenters one day. It hasn't happened yet. We don't know if it will happen eventually. But yeah, so basically that's what Karl Marx explained, that the rich exploits the poor, and that's the conflict theory that we've all had all along in this capitalist society. Free society, free trade, free everything, but it's not free because you can't get into it. So yeah, that's it.
Hi again, I'm Mimi, and I'm going to be teaching you about legal reality theory. This theory was established by William Chambliss in 1969. According to William, there are two kinds of law. First, the law that is on the books, the ideal of the law, and secondly, the practice of law, which is the law in action or the reality of the law. In theory, the law is supposed to be applied equally and enforced equally. However, in reality, he asserts that the law favors the rich and powerful over the weak, and therefore the rich and powerful get to decide what deviant behavior is and who is deemed deviant. Instead of this gap between the reality and the practice of the law being created by humans who are flawed or just downright evil, Chambliss says the people are influenced more by the historical traditions and organization regarding the law, originating in early England. Personal wrongdoings, or deviance, were seen as wrongs against the state, and therefore the state had the power to punish. Things were no longer able to be settled on the farm, so to speak. This meant that someone needed to make laws and someone needed to enforce the laws, and this created two distinct separate groups: the lawmakers, the legislature, and the law enforcers, the judiciary. The content of laws and the manner of their enforcement, both in early England and present-day United States, favor the ruling class. Historically and currently, the interests of the rich and powerful are favored over the poor and powerless. Take, for instance, the difference in enforcement concerning powdered cocaine and crack cocaine. Congress in 1986 enforced a federal sentencing policy that those who commit crimes involving crack cocaine are to be punished on a 100-to-1 ratio compared to those who commit crimes involving cocaine in powder form. Now, crack cocaine is generally found in low-income areas. It is known as the ghetto drug and is possessed by minorities because it is cheaper and therefore carries a greater sentence. Powdered cocaine, however, is generally possessed by the rich and powerful, mostly white, upper class, and this law about powdered cocaine is not enforced as evenly. This leads very nicely into his final point, the organizational imperative. Law enforcers, police, lawyers, judges, etc., are the tools of power and privilege because of organizational imperative, which is, and I'm quoting from the book here, it is the nature of any organization to compel its members to perform tasks that will maximize reward and minimize trouble for the organization. So, what exactly does this mean? It means that the reward that is desired by law enforcement is public support. Therefore, arresting and prosecuting vagrant criminals and those deemed by society as deviant will garner the desired result. Murderers, rapists, drug dealers, putting those guys in jail puts everybody at ease and puts the upper middle class in a feeling that they are safe. However, it will cause trouble for the organization, the police, government, those who enforce the laws, etc., if they were to pursue the upper middle class for their white-collar crimes. The gap between the ideal law and the law in action is alive and well, and this affects our definition and treatment of deviant behavior. And that is legal reality theory.
My name is Chris, and I'll be talking about the social reality theory. So, this theory was created by Richard Queeny, and he blames the unjust law on the capitalist system. So, according to his theory, there are four factors that help produce the capitalist society's high crime rates, but also consolidates its established legal order and its dominant class. So there are four factors. The four factors are defines, applies, action, and ideology. For defines, we just simply have powerful people of society create laws. The second factor is for our protection. It's called applies. It's having police officers, judges, or any person from the criminal justice system enforce laws. So the third factor is applies. We have the subordinate class be compelled by life conditions to encourage in acts that have been defined as criminal. Another way to look at that is just a poor person is is most likely to commit a crime because he is poor, and that's just the way it is, and that's what his theory states. And the fourth is ideology, that they shall automatically be arrested, prosecuted, or imprisoned. So these four factors interrelate with each other. Another way to look at it is having a poor person commit a criminal act such as murder or robbery. The dominant class will create laws against them, and this will make a life even harder for the poor people, forcing them to have to commit even more crimes. So it just basically not equal.
Hi, I'm Shanique from Sociology 304, and I'll be discussing a section out of our textbook, Deviant Behavior. This is Chapter 3, page 46, Marx Theory. In this section, it discusses how the cause of deviance can be traced to the exploitative nature of capitalism. Some of the reasons are increased profit and to enhance productivity at low labor costs. Now, they do this by using automation and other labor-saving devices, forcing workers to work faster and work overtime, relocating industries to cheap labor locations, and also by importing workers from poor nations. In result, this throws some of the existing labor force out of work. These unemployed laborers become what Marx called the marginal surplus population. In other words, the useless to the economy. Now, in result, their inability to maintain decent living conditions pressures them to commit crimes. Capitalists produce crimes among the unemployment lower class people. Some are property crimes like robbery and theft. Some are personal crimes like assault, murder, and rape, and other forms of deviant crimes like alcoholism, suicide, mental illness. And this all results in lack of self-esteem and a sense of powerlessness and alienation, which creates intense pressures on individuals. Now, many people turn to violence, and this is so they can vent their frustration by striking out against authority. Also, some they turn their frustration inward and experience severe emotional difficulties. Now, in result, people tend to commit crimes and become deviants by making them poor in the first place. Poverty is not the only mean by which capitalism generates deviance. Now, some of the reasons capitalist society can also produce crimes by exercising coercive control over the lower classes. In other words, threatening to fire or actually firing poor workers in order to coerce them to work hard for their capitalist employers. Now, this tends to create resentment, feeling alienated from society, or a lack of attachment. Also, they're more likely to engage in criminal activities. Capitalistic pressure to commit crime and other forms of deviance is not confined to the lower class, but reaches upward to affect the higher classes as well, by making possible constant accumulations of profits. Capitalism inevitably creates powerful empires in the economy, such as monopoly and oligopoly. The economic characteristics are important cause of corporation crime. The reasons are when only a few firms dominate a sector company, they can more easily collide to the prices, divide up the market, and eliminate competition. So this is what sums it up for the theory of Marx. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I'll be talking about feminist theory. Most deviant theories apply to both sexes. Feminists disagree. They argue that many theories about deviance only applies to men. For example, Murden string theory assumes people are inclined to strive for material success. This may be true for men, but not women. This is because we live in a patriarchal society, and men are more socialized to achieve material success. Women are traditionally less interested in achieving material success, but instead would rather obtain emotional success through personal relationships. However, Murden's theory assumes if women have a strong desire for economic success but no opportunities for it, they would commit a crime. However, when women are faced with a lack of opportunities for greater economic success, they did not engage in deviant activities. Women also have a lower rate in the United States compared to men. In fact, feminists argue that crime against women reflect the patriarchal society to put women in their place. When women do commit crimes, they tend to reflect their subordinate positions in society, such as minor property crimes like shoplifting, passing back checks, welfare fraud, petty credit card fraud. The increases in these crimes reflect the increase in feminization of poverty, which are women falling below the poverty line. Some criminals who are women are more likely to be unemployed without a high school diploma and be single mothers with children. Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I'll be talking about feminist theory. Most deviant theories apply to both sexes. Feminists disagree. They argue that many theories about deviance only applies to men. For example, Murden string theory assumes people are inclined to strive for material success. This may be true for men, but not women. This is because we live in a patriarchal society, and men are more socialized to achieve material success. Women are traditionally less interested in achieving material success, but instead would rather obtain emotional success through personal relationships. However, Murden's theory assumes if women have a strong desire for economic success but no opportunities for it, they would commit a crime. However, when women are faced with a lack of opportunities for greater economic success, they did not engage in deviant activities. Women also have a lower rate in the United States compared to men. In fact, feminists argue that crime against women reflect the patriarchal society to put women in their place. When women do commit crimes, they tend to reflect their subordinate positions in society, such as minor property crimes like shoplifting, passing back checks, welfare fraud, petty credit card fraud. The increases in these crimes reflect the increase in feminization of poverty, which are women falling below the poverty line. Some criminals who are women are more likely to be unemployed without a high school diploma and be single mothers with children.
Ricardo Bello, and I'll be presenting power theory. Power inequality affects people's lives, and it also affects the quality of deviant activity likely to engage in. The rich and powerful are more likely to engage in profitable acts such as corporate crime, while the poor and powerless are more likely to engage in less profitable deviant acts such as armed robbery. The analysis of deviance literature proposes 3 reasons why the powerful are more likely to commit profitable deviance than the powerless to commit less profitable deviance. The powerful possess a stronger deviant motivation when they experience relative deprivation. Relative deprivation is defined as the experience of being deprived of something of which one believes they are entitled. In contrast to the powerless, the powerful are more likely to raise their aspirations and desires so high that they cannot be accomplished. The powerful possess greater deviant opportunities. For example, if a banker and a poor worker want to illegitimately acquire a large sum of money, the banker has access to more and greater opportunities. The banker has also acquired skills that make it easy to defraud customers and has a good chance of getting away with it. The powerful encounter weaker social control. The laws against high status criminals are lenient and almost never enforced, but the laws for lower status criminals are harsher and are regularly enforced. This is due to the influence that the powerful have in the making and enforcement of laws. An example is the execution of lower class murderers for the killing of one person, but not a single corporate criminal has received the same punishment for making an untested drug which killed many people. In conclusion, power theory states that the powerful are more likely to become involved in a profitable deviance than the powerless and less profitable deviants.
My name is Gabriel Verdugo. I'll be doing postmodernist theory. Postmodernist theory first emerged in the early 20th century as a philosophical movement in France that questioned the values of modernism, such as innovation, rationality, objectivity, and other similar values represented by modern science and technology. These modernist values were criticized for encouraging, among other things, objectification, depersonalization, alienation, and other social problems that make it difficult for people to form genuine or close relationships. The French philosophers then called for greater attention to postmodernist values, including subjectivity, feeling, and intuition, so that a richer, more meaningful life can be attained. Postmodernist theory contains both old and new ideas in the sociology of deviance. First is the theory's attack on modern science's emphasis on the search for objective truth. To postmodernists, the so-called objectivity in modern sciences is actually subjective because it involves the scientists imposing their own privileged professional view on the subject under their investigation. The subjective view of the subject, whether the subject is a deviant, victim, or anybody who reacts in some way to the deviant act, is therefore suppressed, discounted, disregarded, or ignored. But to postmodernists, the subjective's own views are important for understanding deviance. By thus attacking positivism and advocating the subjectivity, postmodernist theory is similar to phenomenological theory. Another old idea in postmodernist theory is what its developers call deconstructionism. This term is defined as tearing a text apart by which means of any phenomenon or event such as deviance, revealing its contradictions and assumptions. In other words, deconstruction is said to involve the breaking up of something that has been built as in demolition, and exposing the way in which it has been built. This meaning of deconstruction is basically the same as the meaning of what is popularly called analysis, which involves studying something by separating the whole into its component parts. Deconstruction is different, though, in it serves to destroy, challenge, or question the conventional way of looking at things, such as deviance. But because of its emphasis on the importance of subjectivity, the postmodernist concept of deconstructionism is similar to the phenomenologicalist idea of phenomenological bracketing, which requires eliminating preconceptions in order to maximize sensitivity to the subject's experiences. Postmodernist theory does have some new ideas. At the heart of the theory is linguistic domination, which assumes that a linguistic conflict exists in any social interaction, with the language of the strong dominating that of the weak. To understand the significance of linguistic domination for deviance, consider, for example, the linguistic conflicts between the government and the rebellious citizens. The government often calls political dissidents traitors, revolutionaries criminals, and freedom fighters terrorists. But the so-called deviants, dissidents, revolutionaries, and freedom fighters often refer to themselves as concerned citizens battling a corrupt government. The first set of words, traitors, criminals, and terrorists, is privileged, respected, or taken seriously, while the second set, dissidents, revolutionaries, and freedom fighters, is marginalized, ignored, or suppressed. Thus the government can receive considerable support from the masses and make life extremely difficult for the political dissidents. Overall, this theory can be used to empower the weak and oppressed. It can be used to push forward any movement that can be classified as progressive. It can apply to the saying, one person's freedom fighter is another's terrorist. When you have an oppressive government desperately trying to maintain control over its populace, The postmodernist theorists can unravel the truth if done correctly. Just understand the true meaning of revolutionary and freedom fighter. I'll paraphrase Friedrich Nietzsche here. When fighting monsters, beware you don't become one.